There are rare moments when a familiar voice or face suddenly feels fragile, when audiences realize that the people who have filled their lives with laughter are human first and icons second. Catherine O'Hara has long existed in that quiet space between brilliance and mystery. She never chased spectacle, yet she commanded attention without effort. While the world associates her with unforgettable characters, what often goes unnoticed is her deliberate restraint, her refusal to turn her private life into public theater. That choice has fueled curiosity, reverence, and sometimes misunderstanding. In an era where constant visibility is mistaken for relevance, Catherine O'Hara built a career on absence as much as presence. She reminded audiences that silence can be powerful, that dignity can be louder than headlines, and that true influence doesn't require constant explanation. Her story is not about shock or scandal, but about endurance, intention, and the quiet weight of giving joy for decades. Where humor became a survival skill, Catherine O'Hara's relationship with comedy began long before scripts, cameras, or applause. Growing up in a large Catholic family in Toronto, humor wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. In a house full of strong voices and constant motion, timing mattered. If you wanted to be heard, you learned quickly how to observe, react, and connect. Those early years shaped her instincts more than any formal training ever could. She learned that laughter could soften tension, that wit could create belonging, and that comedy worked best when rooted in truth. These lessons stayed with her. They explain why her performances never feel cruel or hollow. Even her most exaggerated characters are grounded in empathy. She understood people because she grew up navigating personalities, moods, and moments every day. Comedy for her was never about ego. It was about understanding human behavior and reflecting it back with warmth. The discipline behind effortless comedy. When Catherine O'Hara entered the world of improvisational comedy, she stepped into one of the most demanding creative arenas imaginable. Improvisation rewards listening more than speaking and punishes ego instantly. In those rooms, she learned to disappear into characters so completely that audiences forgot the performer behind them. Working alongside future legends, she wasn't competing for attention. She was refining instinct. Those years taught her precision, patience, and trust in collaboration. Comedy became craft, not chaos. Nothing was accidental, even when it looked spontaneous. That discipline followed her throughout her career. It's why her work feels effortless while being meticulously constructed. Improvisation also taught her humility. You succeed only as much as the people around you do. That philosophy shaped her reputation as a generous performer, someone who elevated scenes rather than dominating them, quietly building a legacy rooted in respect and consistency. Becoming a familiar face without becoming ordinary mainstream success often flattens performers into repetition. But Catherine O'Hara achieved something rare. She became familiar without becoming predictable. Her roles didn't just entertain, they settled into people's emotional memory. For many families, her presence became a tradition, a recurring comfort that returned year after year. She played characters who were flawed, anxious, loving, and sincere, mirroring real life rather than escaping it. That authenticity created trust with audiences. Yet despite widespread recognition, she never allowed fame to define her identity. She remained guarded, intentional, and grounded. While viewers welcomed her into their homes, she maintained boundaries that protected her inner world. That balance preserved her longevity. She proved that you can be deeply visible without being fully exposed, and that resonance lasts longer than constant reinvention. Her work didn't chase trends. It created emotional anchors people returned to again and again. The perfectionism. Few ever saw behind Catherine O'Hara's ease on screen lived an intense commitment to getting things right. Comedy for her was not casual. It was precise, demanding, and deeply considered. Every pause, expression, and inflection mattered. Colleagues have often described her as focused and quietly exacting, someone who carried nerves not because of doubt, but because of respect for the work. She never relied on reputation. preparation mattered more than praise. That perfectionism remained largely invisible to audiences who saw only the finished performance, yet it shaped everything she did. It's why her characters linger long after scenes end. She wasn't chasing applause, she was chasing honesty. And honesty requires effort. Her humility sometimes masked how much she carried internally, choosing excellence over ease every time. The laughter she delivered so effortlessly was built on discipline most never saw, a career renaissance defined by freedom. Later in her career, Catherine O'Hara experienced a creative resurgence that introduced her to new audiences while staying true to who she had always been. This chapter wasn't about reinvention, but confidence. She leaned into experience, instinct, and fearlessness. The characters were bold and stylized, yet unmistakably human. What made this period remarkable was intention. She didn't follow trends or soften edges. She embraced specificity. Recognition followed naturally, feeling overdue rather than surprising. Audiences responded because it felt earned. She demonstrated that creativity doesn't fade with time, it sharpens. Instead of resisting age, she used it as texture and depth. That choice reshaped expectations for performers everywhere. Her work during this era wasn't about relevance, it was about freedom. Freedom to be unapologetic, precise, and entirely herself without compromise or explanation. Choosing privacy in a world that demands access. In an industry obsessed with visibility, Catherine O'Hara made privacy her boundary. This wasn't avoidance, it was intention. She understood that creativity needs protection. By separating her work from her personal life, she preserved the space where artistry begins. She allowed herself to be known through characters, not confession. That decision required discipline, especially as fame grew. There were always questions, assumptions, and curiosity, but she never fed them. Silence became her statement. In doing so, she modeled a healthier relationship with success. She showed that relevance doesn't require oversharing and that dignity can coexist with acclaim. Her restraint challenged an industry that often rewards exposure over substance. By choosing privacy, she protected her longevity, her balance, and her sense of self. It remains one of her quietest yet most influential lessons, the influence that lives off camera. Catherine O'Hara's impact reaches far beyond what audiences see on screen. On set, she has long been known as a steady presence, someone who leads through example rather than authority. Younger performers often describe learning simply by watching how she prepares, listens, and treats others. She creates environments where collaboration thrives and egos fade. That influence can't be measured by awards or ratings. It lives in standards passed down, confidence quietly built, and professionalism reinforced daily. She demonstrates that leadership doesn't need dominance, it needs consistency. Her generosity appears in patience, respect, and reliability. In an industry driven by urgency, she offers steadiness. Long after individual roles fade, that influence remains embedded in how people work together, making her legacy as cultural as it is artistic. What her story asks us to remember, Catherine O'Hara's story ultimately invites reflection rather than speculation. It reminds us that behind every performance is a human being balancing effort, vulnerability, and time. Her career asks audiences to appreciate without demanding access, to admire without intrusion. She gave laughter generously while protecting her inner life. That balance is rare and instructive. Her journey shows that longevity is built on boundaries, intention, and self-respect. The legacy she leaves is not just humor, but grace. Grace in how she worked, how she lived, and how she chose restraint in a world that rewards noise. Perhaps the most important lesson is simple. Listen more closely. The quiet ones are often carrying the most, and the joy they give deserves recognition without ownership. Catherine O'Hara's influence endures not because of spectacle, but because of sincerity, discipline, and heart.